relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. By now, you all may have heard that long-reigning WBA super featherweight champion of South Korea, Hyun-Mi Choi, has been labeled a champion in recess, and as a result of that, Alicia Baumgardner will move on to fight someone else for the undisputed crown at 130 pounds. The real question is who? We talked about the two front runners, Ramona Grafe of Germany and the fearsome veteran fighter, former champion Delphine Persoon, how one fight would have more of a profile than the other. I ran a search of Ramona Grafe's previous fights and turned up little to no results. There's little to no footage available of this fighter. This could be a deliberate effort to maintain a sense of anonymity for the 4-0 German up-and-comer, the unbeaten up-and-comer. She doesn't want people researching her. That's possible. I remember hearing 2 years ago that unbeaten up-and-comer Caitlin Phelan of Ireland, ahead of what was her Jessica Shadko fight in Germany, she employed a similar strategy. I remember hearing that her and her team took down any footage of her previous fights as to not allow Jessica Shadko to get a look at her. I don't know if that's what's going on with Ramona Grafe, but it wouldn't surprise me because there's little to no footage available of her, just amateur stuff. It's neither here nor there because there's a feeling that because Ramona Grafe has no profile and is virtually unknown, in all likelihood, Alicia could end up sharing the ring with Delphine Persoon, a far more well-established fighter, a far more well-established name. Sporting a professional record of 47 wins with 3 losses, no draws, 19 knockouts, having only ever been knocked out once. Just once, and that was many, many years ago. Over a decade ago, 12 years ago, at the hands of Zelda Tekken. A lot has happened since then. There's a feeling that because Delphine Persoon has more of a profile than Ramona Grafe, and because Delphine Persoon would service as a common opponent between Alicia and Katie Taylor, there's a feeling that Delphine might be who Alicia faces early next year in February on the undercard of Serrano versus Cruz. Facts by the numbers show that Delphine is the more experienced fighter of the two. She's more experienced, at least as a professional, than Alicia, who sports a professional record of 13 wins with 1 loss, no draws, 7 knockouts. Delphine has a lot more pro fights than Alicia does, though Delphine is several years older than Alicia. 9 years older, to be exact. Delphine Persoon here today is 37 years old to Alicia Baumgardner, who's a very fresh and fly 28. Young and spry. Alicia Baumgardner really has hit her stride, though that's not saying that she wouldn't be in certain peril opposite the ring. Delphine Persoon, who, in spite of being 37 years old, she's still dangerous and still active. She fought 2 times last year and 2 times this year. Earlier this year, she gave then unbeaten Ella Mechaled of France, pretty decent boxer, she gave her her first professional loss. She's still out here. She's still beaten. Unbeaten fighter. She's still a threat, even at 37 years old, maintaining a steady schedule of activity. If she is opposite the ring Alicia Baumgardner in February, she won't have any ring rust or cobwebs to shake off. And we all know how Delphine Persoon likes to go about fighting a fight. She's a mid-range to inside pressure fighter, a durable one, a fearsome one, an awkward one. She's no finesse fighter. To the eye, Delphine Persoon seems to have a lot of holes. Big ones. Affords the opponent a lot of opportunities to get off punches, big ones, counter shots. But because she's so durable, and because she's got a great engine, because she packs a big punch, the trial for Alicia Baumgardner in a situation like this is maintaining form whilst staying on the move, working off the counter, and creating separation, because Delphine Persoon is going to try to close the gap. She's going to try to get mid-range to inside and wear you out. Walk you down. Stalk you in order to force you to trade, force you into exchanges, force you to try and fight her off. As stated, Delphine Persoon is no finesse fighting kind of fighter. I can name any number of fighters that appear to have better form than Delphine, but there's a method to Delphine's madness. She's an aggressive pressure fighter, a volume puncher, whereas Alicia, she's a little bit more reserved. She's more boxer than brawler, more sharpshooter than Gatling gun, more of a sniper, more of a counter puncher, an economic one. It's really only 1 or 2 punches at a time with Alicia as she manages the distance. The work is very neat and tidy, very neat and clear, but the trade-off is sacrificing volume, activity for accuracy.
Because she's very accurate.
The trial here for Alicia. The question is, can she really keep Delphine Persoon off of her, throwing only 1 or 2 punches at a time?
Will her gas tank hold up against the constant pressure that Delphine Persoon applies?
I'd wager that Alicia Baumgardner has the edge in mobility, agility, and quickness. I think to the eye, Alicia Baumgardner has faster hands and faster feet than Delphine Persoon. She may even have
more single one-punch power than Delphine, because Delphine, she's not a one-hitter-quitter kind of fighter.
Though she is a heavy-handed puncher, she wears you down with volume, with activity, with a barrage of punches, salvos, and waves.
Not just a single punch or just 1 or 2 punches.
She throws punches in bunches from the opening round to the final round.
A lot of people feel that it's going to be Delphine Persoon that Alicia shares the ring with in February, though it's not official, it's not finalized, it's open to interpretation and speculation.
So I have to agree that Baumgardner versus Persoon is by far and wide a more intriguing fight than Baumgardner versus Grafe.
Ramona Grafe, a decent amateur, but in the pro ranks, she's little more than a novice, a 4-0 fighter. She's never been in waters this deep before.
Delphine has been there and back, and then some.
Can Alicia Baumgardner really put a dent in Delphine Persoon? Because I've seldom ever seen this woman hurt or tired.
Can Alicia Baumgardner out-hustle her? Or will Delphine out-muscle her? Out-muscle Alicia Baumgardner? Cause this otherwise finesse-fighting kind of fighter to come apart at the seams. It's happened before. Could it happen again?
It happened to Alem Mekhaled earlier this year. Will it happen to Alicia?
We'll just have to wait and see if that's who Alicia is going to be fighting in February, so we can find out. In men's light heavyweight news, Anthony Yarde says Alexander Usyk gave him some advice ahead of Beterbiev showdown. For those not aware, Alexander Usyk and Artur Beterbiev, they locked horns in their amateur days.
Even then, Artur Beterbiev was a strong puncher. He actually dropped Usyk off a body shot.
Seems that power that Artur packs has always been with him, though in those amateur bouts, Alexander Usyk recorded 2 victories, 2 points decision wins over Artur. They were younger men then than they are now, likely very different fighters.
The Artur Beterbiev that Usyk faced was an amateur. The one that Anthony Yarde's going to be facing, he's a professional, a unified champion.
We listen. Yarde told SecondsOut.com, when a student of the game gives me advice like Usyk, he was there for the Fury-Chisora fight. Usyk was talking to us, and I was listening. As a person, I'm so humble when it comes to learning. When asked to reveal a few things Usyk told him, Yarde kept mum. That's between me and him, he said. He's just telling me some things, Yarde continued. Remember, he fought Beterbiev twice. He was just telling me some things, just little advice, some things. Lovely guy. When you see me smiling and laughing, it's not fake. Usyk, is the exact same. He's bubbly, but he can fight.
What if I told you that Anthony Yarde has the right base style for the job, just not the right level of experience?
Not enough, at least, that I'm confident he can beat Artur Beterbiev. Though I think Anthony Yarde, he's got a few things working for him, just not enough to convince me that he's going to win this fight.
But what if I told you that he actually has the right base style for the job?
Yeah, man, that's what it's about. Being a student and trying to learn. Everyone is going to be a critic when things aren't going right, but when things are going well, there's an awkward silence. They're only going to have their opinion for the next fight.
Anthony Yarde, he's a strong puncher. Perhaps not as strong punch for punch as Artur Beterbiev, though he doesn't need to be as strong as Artur to hurt him.
Neither Jeff Page or Callum Johnson have the reputation for being bone crushers that Artur Beterbiev has, and yet they both dropped him. They both sat him on his back pocket.
And he was a younger man then than he is now, though simultaneously he was a less experienced fighter, a less experienced professional than he is here today.
Here today, he's shared the ring with the likes of Alexander Vozdik, WBC champion, then WBC champion, then WBO champion, Joe Smith Jr., American Olympian, Marcus Brown.
He's more seasoned now than he was before.
Artur Beterbiev is a mid-range to inside pressure fighter, though he's not just a pressure fighter. He has some boxing acumen, some boxing ability of his own, though we seldom ever see him use it because most of the time he doesn't have to.
Most of the time,
Most of it.
he doesn't have to manage the distance or maintain it because he spends most of the time trying to close it and get to his quarry. That's what more or less makes him a pressure fighter, that he keeps the pressure on.
There's a question as to whether or not Anthony Yarde can handle that pressure in spite of having the right base style for the job because of the level at which he competes. This is a guy who was beaten by a very old Sergey Kovalev.
A shell of his former self.
Anthony was doing all right up until his gas tank gave out. Having not often swum in deep waters with an experienced fighter, a then champion like Sergey Kovalev,
He got tired and he got caught. He got put down, and he stayed down off a jab.
Sergey Kovalev always did pack a good lead hand, a good jab, and it was a jab that ended the fight between him and Anthony Yarde. You think about Anthony's second loss to Lyndon Arthur, a jabber, not really a puncher like Sergey, or Artur for that matter, but a judicious jabber, a moving target that sticks that lead hand out there and keeps it out there. Anthony couldn't find his way around it. He lost the points decision to that guy, avenged the loss by way of knockout.
In the second fight he did, but that was a domestic level fight between two domestic level guys. Anthony, his one visit to the world level, that's when he got stopped by Sergey.
You might be asking yourself, well, if you feel that way, how does this guy have the right tools for the job? How do you say these things and simultaneously say he's got the right base style? And it's because Anthony Yarde is a younger fighter than Artur Beterbiev. Fresher reflexes, a fresher set of legs, and to the eye, he does look a little quicker than Artur.
His hands do, at least.
Even if he's not as crafty, even if he's not as clever, that's one thing he does have working for him. He does look a little quicker, and he's a counter puncher. The kind of guy to where if you stand in front of him, letting him go for too long, he's going to hit you with a punch you don't see. He's going to roll and counter.
Fighting out of a shell guard. I'm really not a fan of that guard, but that's the guard that Anthony Yarde uses.
I'm not convinced he can effectively stave off and defend against Artur's punches using that guard, but Anthony's speed and his power, it is a factor.
This is what I mean. He's got some things working for him, some things working against him.
That in spite of Anthony not having fought at world level as many times as Joe Smith Jr., for example,
I think he'll last a little longer. I think his fight with Artur will go a few more rounds than that fight did, because I don't think he's just going to charge Artur the same way that Joe did.
get himself countered and get himself caught. No, I think that Anthony will make Artur work for his meal a little while longer.
Even if he does suffer the same fate as Joe.
A monumental achievement if Anthony Yarde can pull this off, as I don't think the odds makers, I don't think the bookies have him as the betting favorite in this thing. I know most fight fans don't.
They think he's going to get splattered.
I have a rooting interest in an Artur Beterbiev victory. I have a rooting interest in an Artur Beterbiev win, not because I dislike Anthony Yarde, kid's alright, but it's because if Anthony were to pull the upset in this thing, I don't think for a second Frank Warren would then move to do the undisputed light heavyweight title fight between...
No, he wouldn't. He'd hold on to those three belts as long as he could. Anthony's younger than Artur Beterbiev. There's not as much pressure on Anthony to move straight into an undisputed title fight, whereas for Artur, that guy's close to 40.
There's more pressure on Artur to take on Dimitri because Artur ain't got time to pussyfoot around.
So I do have a rooting interest in an Artur Beterbiev win, though irrespective of rooting interests and what you would prefer, Artur is the favorite.
The betting favorite to win. Finally, in men's super bantamweight and featherweight news, we've been talking a lot about Stephen Fulton's move upstairs to featherweight from super bantamweight, the rift that's created and the backlash he's receiving for essentially walking out on what are potential Naoya Inoue and MJ Akhmadaliev fights. What you need to know
is that they asked for this.
Early last month on the 9th, news broke that a petition was filed by unified WBC and WBO super bantamweight champion Stephen Fulton to compete at featherweight.
That petition was unanimously approved by the WBC's Board of Governors,
And the WBC's ruling confirmed plans for Fulton to face Brandon Figueroa in a rematch to their initial fight last November, this time with WBC interim featherweight title on the line. The winner of the fight, the winner winner of the rematch is essentially in line to become the WBC's featherweight champion.
Or compete against him. The current champion is Rey Vargas of Mexico, but Rey Vargas, like Stephen Fulton, is set to make a move upstairs, up to featherweight for Usyk Foster and what is the newly vacated green belt Shakur Stevenson used to hold.
The way it breaks down, Stephen is moving up to featherweight at a time where Rey Vargas is moving up to super featherweight.
The PBC's got a lot of pieces on the board between 126 and 130 pounds, and they're moving those pieces on the board. I kind of get the sense that if things don't work out for Rey Vargas at 130, he'll return to 126 pounds, where he hasn't campaigned all that long, and continue to reign as WBC champion. That might result in a fight between him and the winner of Figueroa versus Fulton, too.
That's if he loses to Usyk Foster up there at 130 pounds. He'll drop back down to 126. Maybe he takes on the winner of that fight. The question is, who's going to be the winner of that fight? Who's going to be the winner of Figueroa versus Fulton 2?
In their first fight, Stephen Fulton won by the skin of his teeth. There are a lot of people out there that aren't convinced that he deserved that decision, but he got it. That was at 122 pounds. This rematch is at 126. A better weight, I think, for Brandon Figueroa.
Brandon, who used to campaign as a super bantamweight, he was always very big for super bantamweight, and even at featherweight, he has generous physical dimensions, whereas Stephen's a shorter, stumpier fighter.
He's shown good durability at 122 pounds, but up there at 126, well, Brandon Figueroa, he might be a little bit stronger, not having to cut all the way down to 122 pounds, campaigning at 126, might be energized.
Given how close the first fight was and the fact that the second will be taking place at a higher weight, it's not a foregone conclusion that Stephen Fulton wins that rematch.
So on the premise that he does, and he becomes the WBC's interim champion at featherweight, I don't get the sense he's going to return to super bantamweight. I get the sense that that will herald the beginning of a featherweight campaign, that once he gets up there, he's going to stay up there.
That's if he becomes WBC interim champion. If he succeeds, maybe he fights Rey Vargas upon his return to featherweight, or maybe Rey doesn't return and Stephen gets elevated to full champion by way of the WBC. In a nutshell, I think Stephen Fulton's days at super bantamweight are over.
He's not coming back.
After getting everybody excited about a potential Inoue fight or a potential MJ Akhmadaliev fight, in a nutshell, that's what I think is going on. I think he's done at 122. He's staying at 126.
Yeah, win or lose, I don't think he's coming back.
PBC have one or two options there for him at 126. Mark Magsayo, former champion Gary Russell.
Current champion Rey Vargas.
They got more options for him at 126 than they do at 122.
That's why I think he's staying up there.